Right then, guys, welcome back to the Cycle Sunday podcast. Mr. Bowker
Hello,
in
Mr.
Edinburgh.
Green.
How are you, mate?
I'm
You're
very
not in
well.
Edinburgh, are you?
No, I'm in Loch Irby.
You're in Loch Irby. In Shea Bowker.
Yes, indeed.
How are you, mate? You all right?
I'm really good, actually. Yes, very, very good indeed. Already had somebody collect their new bike, and we're only on 9 o'clock.
That's pretty good going, mate, to be honest.
Yeah.
So we are recording this Sunday morning. The episode of Cycle Sunday goes out this evening. We had slight technical difficulties midweek when we had planned to record this. But the exciting thing is I'm going to see you tomorrow.
Dead excited.
Because on Monday, Paul's coming down to do some bike deliveries, which is the subject of this video anyway. And he's in my local area, so he's going to come down and crash and have a couple of beers, which would be very nice.
When we say crash,
well, sleep, sleep, eat, and drink. Yeah, and then also what we're going to do is record a podcast for next week.
Yeah,
together, because I don't think we've actually done one of those yet.
We did a Q&A, didn't we?
Oh, we did. Yeah, we haven't recorded a podcast.
No.
Physically together, which would be very exciting.
Yeah,
it'd be nice not to see you through Zencaster screen. So the other thing, so Paul hasn't seen tonight's episode of Cycle Sunday because I only finished editing it this morning.
There's a theme going on, isn't there?
I know. I'm doing it on purpose, basically. So for those of you who've already watched the video on YouTube, and the theme, there was about 4 themes in the video, actually. The main overriding theme was that during the summer, I think Paul and I had talked so much during the making of Season 1 of Cycle Sunday about e-bikes. And Tracy, Mrs Petrol Ped, had a hybrid, kind of hybrid bike, road bike, that she really enjoyed riding. But the thought of having an e-bike was quite an attractive one. So I ended up buying one. But your bike shop's in Edinburgh, and I live in Chichester, which is a very long way away. But at about that time, you started this nationwide bike delivery service. And we were one of the first bikes to be delivered with said nationwide delivery service. So that was the kind of theme of the bike a long time ago.
Yeah.
Spring forward a few months, and you guys are... So you popping down to see me tomorrow, how many bikes have you got in the back of your van at the moment?
6.
How many bikes can fit in the back of your van?
6. Safely. That's the key thing. I'm actually about to put something up on Instagram because I took some photos of it, and we use a system from a company called Bike Stow that fits into the back of vans really easily and loads really easily. It's so fast, it's so easy, it's ingenious as a system. And we've got one of their 4 bike racks, and we've also got one of their 2 bike racks, and in a long wheelbase Transit Custom that's just a panel van, so it's just a 3-seater at the front and a big box at the back. You can actually get the 4 bike one along the back doors, and then you can get the 2 bike one that's sort of sideways across the front bulkhead. So you can then get 4 mountain bikes, road bikes, e-bikes along the length of the van from the back, and then you can get 2 road bikes sideways on in the width of the van. So we can safely get 6 bikes in without any damage, and that's been the key thing. Is we've delivered a lot of bikes since the 1st of June, and
come on, give us a rough number.
No, because I don't want every bike shop on the planet wanting to go, oh, that's worth it.
But 4. You've done 4.
Yeah, we've done 4. Yeah, it's been an unmitigated failure. No, it's been a really good addition to the business, and most importantly, customers have absolutely been blown away because they say to us, "Oh, right, okay, you have the bike delivered," and we go, "Yeah, I just need to book that in with you." Oh, right, okay. I say, "Well, I'm thinking of bringing it down on Monday at this time," and they go, "Well, hang on, what? You are bringing it down on? Oh, yeah. You're going to get a full personal delivery. We're going to do a full handover, and your accessories are going to be fitted, and the bike will be ready to ride." What, you mean it's not just like a third-party courier that's
Box arrives by DPD
yeah,
or something.
that basically does a US Postal Service flyby and opens the van door while it's still moving and throws the box out. You're actually going to deliver it. And we go, yeah, it's personal service. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, so we experienced that, and we kind of showed it in tonight's video, and I think especially with some of the high end bikes, it's nice, especially actually with e-bikes. There's quite a bit in the handover.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't cover it too much in the video, otherwise the video would have been like 50 minutes long or something.
Yeah.
But when you're handing over an e-bike, there's a whole range of stuff around. Obviously, the different modes. Oh, look at that! You see, I'm if you're watching this on YouTube, we've got the same mugs going on. Pure coincidence, by the way. But no, with an e-bike, you hand over an e-bike, you've got the normal bike things like the gears, but you've then got the different assistance modes from the electric motor. You've got things like walk mode. Then you've got to talk about charging.
Yep.
And understand how to get the battery off and the different options you've got for charging. And it's a bit more of a complex handover.
Yeah.
And I know when with when Tracy got her bike, it was just nice to have that. And I think actually, because there's an element that says, well, you can do that handover with, like, I don't know, a quick start guide or something. But what you can't do with a quick start guide is ask a question and say, well, what happens if this, or how do I do that? Or, when you're looking at the bike, maybe there's things on there that you just want to, clarify. And that's the great thing, having your knowledge on hand when you get the bike. Because let's face it, some of these things next to a car and a house are probably one of the most expensive things you're going to buy.
Yeah, it's fair.
Yeah. So no, it was brilliant. So we got T's e-bike, and she absolutely loves the bike. But the interesting thing for me in the video, and I'm wondering whether this will resonate with any I'm not just going to say female listeners, but anybody who's a slightly smaller in stature, is that an e-bike's quite a heavy thing.
Mm-hmm.
They're not heavy when you ride them. And when we talk about, we've got a video coming up about the whole my e-bike and how I'm finding it. When you're riding them, I don't find them heavy,
no,
really at all. It's when they're stationary or when you're just maneuvering them around.
Yeah,
they're heavy things. They're best part of 20 kilos. So if you're quite a small frame person, then straight away it's a very different feeling, isn't it, than a normal bike?
Yes. Yeah, Rosie finds the same. So with her e-bike, she absolutely loves it, and the weight actually helps in certain circumstances whilst you're rolling, because it actually makes the bike feel more stable and more planted in certain circumstances. But you're absolutely right. If you've not got a particularly strong upper body, let's put it that way, just physically manoeuvring it around. Handlebars are quite wide nowadays, and
They are, aren't they?
yeah, and the bike can sometimes just, I think Rosie used the term, it feels quite cumbersome just when physically manoeuvring it around. But then, as you quite rightly say, once you're up and running, that weight just completely disappears and starts becoming your friend.
Yeah, the time I find it most obvious actually is when you get back. I got back from riding my rail yesterday, and I was washing it.
Yes.
And normally with a bike, you kind of pick it up, spin it round to wash the other side, and you kind of can't do that with an e-bike because they weigh so much.
Yeah.
You have to kind of wheel it round, or when you do lift it, you have to try and work out where the best place on the bike to pick it up is.
Yeah.
So T loved the bike, and once she was riding was fine. But the big challenge she had was the saddle height and just getting that sweet spot of having the saddle high enough so that her leg extension was correct when she was riding. But unfortunately, when it was that high, getting on and off the bike was a real challenge for her.
Yes.
And interestingly, as we saw in the video, it's exactly the same for Rosie. And the solution that we came up with, I just thought was genius. And actually, it wasn't really what dropper posts were designed for.
No.
But it works brilliantly.
Yeah. I think it would be important as well, just to preface, because Rosie, with or without a dropper post, wouldn't use it for this particular reason. But Rosie has been riding a bike since she was a child. So the physical act of coming to a stop and not having to put her feet down whilst on the saddle is not important to her.
Yeah.
Because Rosie has been used to all the way through her life coming to a stop, bringing your bum forward, standing over the top tube of the bike, and then getting back on the bike by
Yeah.
kicking off and letting your bum go back up onto the saddle. So that is very
Yeah.
natural. But just preface these decisions with Tracy's situation in particular.
Yeah. Yeah. Because she didn't have a bike as a kid, so
Yeah,
quite new to riding, and it's funny actually. The one thing I've kind of it's taught me is you take for granted some bike handling skills because like you said, some of us were riding bikes from not that long after we were able to walk,
yeah,
and bombing around as kids. And I think I've mentioned on a podcast before, I had a rally grifter. I managed, we used to set up jumps and do all kinds of things. And
yes,
so you kind of take those bike handling skills for granted. But if you are less confident, then actually that getting on and getting off of the
yeah,
bike, it's fine if you're isolated, and you're on a little country lane. But if you're coming up to a T junction on a relatively busy
yeah,
road, and you've got this challenge getting on and off the bike, confidently, that's a big problem in just your confidence in riding the bike.
yeah,
So one of the things that this new solution has done is it's kind of eradicated that worry. Because if you've got a worry like that, you suddenly start to think, well, where am I going to ride my bike? Can I go down this road? Is it too busy? Where is there a junction? What if there's a car? What if I have to get on and off the bike? And all of those things start to make you think, not I'm not going to go out on the bike.
yes,
And for me, one of the things we've tried to do during the whole Cycle Sunday thing on a number of occasions is just get people out on their bikes.
yeah.
And if you've got a thing hanging, a doubt in the back of your head about, whether you're going to enjoy yourself or whether you're going to have a problem, you don't go out on your
No,
bike.
no. And I think a lot of people face exactly the same thing as what Tracy's experienced. And
Yeah,
particularly with the purchase of e-bikes, we have a lot of people who are coming to buy e-bikes because they've not been able to, for whatever reason, they've not exercised for many years. They've been busy with families and work and that sort of stuff, haven't had the time or opportunity to get out on their non-pedal bikes, or their non-electric bikes, sorry, and want to be able to sort of get straight onto their new bike and be able to go and ride it, and but maybe not have ridden a bike for a good number of years. So, Tracy's not in that mode. Tracy's been riding a bike fairly regularly for the last few years, but didn't have that previous sort of experience as a child. Whereas we have other customers who are coming in who used to ride a bike when they were a teenager, but then for the last
yeah,
20 years haven't ridden a bike, so have the same confidence issues.
yeah, yeah. And I get, the dropper post thing. If you buy, like I did, a rail, for example, a full suspension mountain bike, it's likely going to come with a dropper post as standard because the whole point of a dropper post is on a mountain bike. On your descents, you drop the saddle down so it's out the way, so you can, like we showed in the video, maneuver over the bike
Yeah,
and descend more effectively. And then when you get to a climb, you raise the saddle back up again and
yeah,
start
yes,
pedaling. The kind of, I guess, the sort of hybrid type, road bike type cycles wouldn't have a dropper post fitted normally because you wouldn't be doing shredding gnar down some a proper dodgy
yeah,
descent.
that's correct.
But they work really, really well.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That was a cue for
yes.
you,
Sorry,
probably.
sorry. Yeah, yeah. No, no, no. They do work really well. So as you've quite rightly said, a dropper post is perfect uh, to ride more dynamically and have the bike move around underneath you. They weren't designed as office chairs where you can just literally pull a lever and drop the saddle height down to put your feet on the ground, but they do that job brilliantly. And I was absolutely delighted when you brought Tracy's bike up. We fitted the dropper post to the bike, took it back down, and Tracy you did a very short video of Tracy using it for the first time, and I think it looked on the video. She found it quite intuitive. There was a couple of moments of what do I do and when do I do it, because it does take a bit getting used to. But it did the absolute desired effect, because I think part of the problem was that on e-bikes, because the bike manufacturers having to package so much, particularly onto the small frame sizes, it's quite easy on the bigger bikes because you don't have the same packaging issues. On the small bikes, you're trying to package the same size battery as the big bikes. You're trying to package a wheel and a suspension system into there as well. And you're trying to accommodate for a shorter standover clearance. And when you start getting into the sort of really small bikes, there are things that are compromised. So standover clearance is one of those things. And for Tracy, what was happening was that as with the saddle in the correct height, so on a fixed seat post, with the saddle in the correct height for her to pedal, what's happening was that when Tracy was sort of standing over the top tube of the bike, kicking off to go and try and ride, she was catching the back of her shorts on the nose of the saddle, and that was putting her off balance as well. Whereas the wonderful thing about dropper post is she can now drop the post, because it's got 100 millimeters, so 10 centimeters of drop. Tracy can now come to a junction, come to a stop, drop the seat post down, stay on the saddle, and put her feet on the floor. And then so physically getting going again is absolutely no issue at all. And within a couple of pedal strokes, you can just stand on the pedals, hit the lever on the handlebars, saddle goes up to a normal riding position, boom, she's off.
Yeah. And that the video I sent you is the one that was the clip I used in the film tonight, and that was actually only the second. That was take 2.
Oh, brilliant!
Because the first one the video didn't come out, so that was only the second time she'd done it actually, and she was on my lovely scrunchy ride, which which isn't the best for bikes. So no, it's we haven't had the opportunity to really get out and do a proper ride. Hopefully, we might go out today because it's quite sunny today. But yeah, it's I guess it's one of those. I have to say though, and unfortunately in the video we didn't really have time to show it. My assumption was it was going to be a really super easy install. It's just a seat post. What I didn't realise is on an e-bike, yes, it is a seat post, but the cable routing goes down the seat tube, up the main kind of bottom tube where the battery is, and then out through the head tube into the handlebars, and that means you have to take the motor off.
Correct. Yeah. It's engine out, and yeah, it's a big job. If you want to do it right, so like with everything, and we'll get it in the comments. Oh, I didn't have to do that on mine. I just basically zip tied it to the outside of the thing and just shoved it up a hole, right? Okay, we're talking about a proper install now, people. So if you want to install a stealth routed dropper post properly, so all you basically see is the cable coming out of the port on the head tube of the bike, as Peter's already said, that then goes to the cable actuated lever. The engine needs to come out, so the cable actually routes over the top of the engine and then up the seat post of the bike, and that's where the cable's actuated from the bottom of the seat post, and it's a beautiful install.
Yeah, because I think when Stephen, your tech, was doing it, because we were filming lots of other stuff, so he kind of started, and I went off, I think, with you to film something, came back, and Tracy's bike was in bits, and the what I didn't realise until I'd seen that was that the motor and the cranks and the bottom bracket is all like one unit. I don't know how I imagined it was going to be actually, but it was really interesting to see the inside part of an e-bike, actually, the main power part, how the cranks and stuff work. But yeah, I was like, oh wow, yeah, it's a big install.
Yeah.
And then when he put it back in, and again, I didn't film him putting back in, but the nest of cables and wires and connectors and stuff that you had to kind of put in and make sure nothing was fouling and everything was connected up. It was really, really complicated.
And it's also making sure that when you're putting things back in, that there's no kinks or there's no tight spots to any of the cables as well, so that
Yeah,
the actual lever actuation feels buttery smooth, as opposed to
yeah,
notchy and tight. So it is the difference between an amateur and a professional installation, and these things do take quite a lot of time.
yeah, 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 yeah. And I think anybody who's what we've got. I've had loads of feedback from watching the build of the Ultra XR4. You guys don't
No,
cut corners. There's no such thing as that'll do. It's the right way or it
correct.
doesn't happen. And that gives confidence, I think, to anybody who wants to buy a bike. Bearing in mind, you've got to put them together when they come from the factory and make sure that they're okay, and you do a really detailed PDI check and all
Yeah.
those types of things. So yeah, no, it was good. So yeah, she's now fully up and running. I'm now expecting to be dropped again because I think we've talked about it before. What I love about her having an e-bike now is that we can go out on our bikes together. And I've been out with her on her e-bike when I'm on the
Yeah.
Arcadex quite a few times, and it's ace because we can
Yes.
ride together. And it's not ace when we get to a hill because she drops me. Gets to the top of the hill and like, where were you? I was like, yeah, I'm coming. Just wait. But it is lovely because you get to ride together, and I know we've talked about this so much with the whole e-bike thing. Is that they are a brilliant thing to buy as a couple to go out and enjoy cycling together because they even
Yes.
it out, and you end up basically being able to, a similar capability. The stronger rider just uses a bit less assistance from the motor, and you can ride together,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
ace.
Rosie and I love
So
ours. They're just fantastic. Yes.
yeah, awesome.
Mm.
So in other news.
Other news.
In other news, now we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit here because I think we mentioned this in the very last video of Cycle Sunday, but I'm just going to do a slight tease, and that is you've built some amazing bikes recently, like some real showstoppers, and your bro Richard
Mm.
has. Well, I saw it when I was last at the shop a few weeks ago now, as just a bare frame,
Mm.
and it's now a built Bianchi Specialissima, and what a thing!
It is lovely, but it's also for sale.
Huh? You're not selling Richard's bike again, are you? You've got a history of this, mate.
I do.
Is he aware that you're selling it?
Look, it's always better to ask for forgiveness than for permission.
Well, I tell you, what frame size is it?
It's a 59 centimetre.
So if anybody wants a 59 centimetre in a bluish green with
Yeah.
mermaid scale lettering,
Yes.
believe me, I know bluish green doesn't sound like a great colour, but oh my god, it's gorgeous.
It's absolutely the
And is
bike
it
is stunning.
Di2 Ultegra?
No, this
Oh
one.
no, it was Super Record, wasn't it?
No, record. So
Record.
so so this bike is a Campag record mechanical,
Yeah.
with disc brakes and the 33 millimeter depth of your wheels, which are the Campag Bora WTOs. So the bike is properly set up for being a all day climbers bike. If anybody loves doing Alps riding and the Lake District and the Peak District, it's got a compact chain set on the front. It's got 11 to 34 tooth cassette, so you've got a sub 1-to-1 ratio on first gear. It's so light. I mean, it's seven and a bit kilos as a 59 centimeter frame size, right? So this thing is absolutely phenomenal, beautiful looking bike. You'll enjoy cleaning it as much as you'll enjoy riding it. And
It's a living room wall bike.
it very much is. It's absolutely gorgeous. So no, Richard is aware. Not that he's particularly enamoured about the idea, but the thing is that we've got a couple of business projects coming up that is going to suck a lot of time.
Yeah.
And the way we worked was we've got this bike, it's built, and for the next 6 months, it's actually not going to get used at all.
Yeah.
And then with the new business projects we've got coming up potentially, how much time is Richard actually going to have to ride the bike next year is the reality. So what we thought was, we'll put the
What you
bike.
thought was.
What I thought was, let's put the bike up for sale. So it's on our website now. Put the bike up for sale. If it sells, it sells. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I mean, it's going to sell. So,
Oh, mate,
yeah.
it's one of the most. I mean, it's, and I'm not. I know I'm cooing over it, but it is a beautiful looking thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're 59 centimeter frame size and you want a climbing bike, go
Yeah.
buy it, people. Go buy it.
Yeah.
And then he
So,
did an Ultra this week, which looked amazing.
yeah, so we've got a second Specialissima. So let's stay on the Specialissima theme for a second. So we've got Specialissima, which is a 2022 model year in a 55 centimeter, and that's in the raw carbon with like a rainbow effect Bianchi lettering on it, and that's got new 12-speed Ultegra Di2 and alloy wheels
That
fitted to that.
that's
That
the
was the one
one.
that you were
Yeah.
thinking, yeah. So, so we've got two Specialissimas, one in a 55, one in a 59. And then the Ultra that you were just referring to, that's a 2022 model year in the latest team colours. Again, Ultegra Di2 12-speed. That's in a 59 centimetre, and that's absolutely fantastic. So, yeah, we've had some big deliveries of high-end Bianchi.
Sexy bikes.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Oh.
Really nice. But
Oh, dear.
get them while you can, seriously, because anybody who's thinking, oh, I'll go and visit them in spring, when I'm thinking about buying my new road bike, don't. Just get it. If it's a bike that you want to buy, get it bought now, because our big concern for model year 22 for next year is carbon road and electric mountain bike. Just if you've got a bike that you want to buy for next season and you see it, buy it. Just get it done, because there's going to be a massive shortage of carbon road for next year, and it's down to the component supply.
I was going to say, I mean, we've talked about this a lot in the podcast, but is there no sign of the component supply issue getting better?
No,
or is it?
no.
By the sounds of it, it's getting worse.
It's getting worse in certain certain sectors. It's getting worse. I mean, we've had to up our pre-orders again for components just to try and keep customers' bikes that they bought on the road for servicing. So yeah, it's quite dire out there for certain components. Other bikes are now actually starting to get relatively good. So sort of entry level hybrid and entry level hardtail mountain bike. Not fill your boots. It's not like there's thousands of them sat on a shelf somewhere. But if somebody, say for example, wants an entry level mountain bike, a hybrid bike for a Christmas present, chances are, dependent on the size and don't be too fussy on colour, we'll get your bike sorted. But certain sizes of road bike, my goodness, it is just it's horrendous.
It's amazing, really, because it's very nearly a year ago since we started this project.
Yeah.
Right, and back then, I think there were some issues, but I don't think it was nearly as bad as well, it certainly wasn't bad as it is now. But to think it's a year later and it's getting worse.
Yeah,
it's not getting better.
Yeah.
And it's not. I was outside of the cycling sphere. I was with having some stuff done on my car, and they were saying they've got the same problem when they get a car in for some work or a service and they need a specific part. They had 3 cars in the garage that had bits waiting. They said it's the same in the car industry. Dealers, same for car supply in the dealerships and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a real problem.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Not good.
No, it's not good, and I think it's a whole combination of let's not do the whole cause COVID, cause Brexit thing. I think it's just a total combination of everything. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So, next, we've done very little planning of this podcast. We're just having a chinwag.
It's good. I'm loving it.
Yeah. So the next, just to kind of give people a heads up as to what's still to come on Cycle Sunday is, if you've seen the video that dropped this evening, as well as delivering an e-bike for Tracy, you also had a special surprise for me in the back of the van, and that was the Arcadex gravel bike.
Yes.
Now, we have talked about that on podcasts because I am mildly in love. Actually, no, I'm completely obsessed with the whole concept of gravel, and that bike is it's just a weapon. Basically, it's a phenomenal bike to ride.
Yeah.
So next week's Cycle Sunday, I over the summer, it was only about 3 or 4 weeks after you dropped the bike off, I took it to the Cotswolds with a good friend of mine, and we went and kind of did what gravel bikes are meant to do. We did a big long ride.
Yeah.
Turned out a bit longer than we planned. Watch the video and just so all I can say is I'm so glad I was on a gravel bike and not a mountain bike, because if we accidentally added 10 miles to the route, and it nearly killed me anyway. But if I'd have been on a mountain bike, I would literally have died. So that was coming in, and actually now we're coming into the winter. Gravel's a really nice option, because I'm certainly not going to ride the Ultra unless it's super dry. I'm just worried about all of the grime and the salt and all the stuff on the roads. I don't particularly want to kind of have that all over my lovely Super Record EPS chain and cassette. Thanks. Yeah. So I think I might well be leaving that till the spring. But the gravel bike, they're meant for it.
Yes.
Right? They're meant to be kind of to get dirty. So I'll be getting out on that a lot. And I'm getting out my rail. I went out on the rail yesterday, which was lovely.
I love the photo. The photo was really nice.
Yeah, I was up on the top of the South Downs Way, and it was just not. I think like many people, I'll say many people, not most of us. Many people, got that work thing versus getting out into the fresh air and doing some exercise. And unfortunately, I'm very guilty of, if there's a choice between the two. In recent months, it's been work that wins. Be that editing a video or. Yeah. And I'm trying very hard to make that decision the other way around now, so that fine, if it's a nice day, I'll get out on the bike. And I went out yesterday, and it was just so lovely to be out in the fresh air.
Yeah,
I did about 22 miles, and I put a thing on social saying, "Listen, people, e-bikes aren't cheating." And now I've been out. I've only done 2 rides on it, and I will tell. I'm not going to kind of steal my thunder too much for a video that's going to drop in 2 weeks' time. Or 3 weeks' time. You can go out on an e-bike and you can have a ride and you can destroy yourself.
Yes.
Even though you're on an e-bike.
Yeah.
Just because it's an e-bike doesn't mean you don't sweat and you don't raise your heart rate and you don't come back feeling knackered.
Yeah. Yeah. You just go up steep things fast.
Yeah. There's a big long drag near me, and you kind of just went up it, and it's big long grassy drag. And normally on my normal mountain bike, I'd be going up it at maybe 6 to 8 miles an hour, something like that, because it's horrible. On the e-bike, I went up it at 16, and it totally transformed the ascent. It was wicked.
Yes.
Because you're suddenly like, oh wow, this is cool. So yeah, it just changes the bike ride. You still put the same amount of effort in. You just go further, and you faster.
Yeah, and also what we've said all the way along with e-bikes is, what an e-bike does is gets you over the thought of going out and riding your bike. So going back to 5 minutes ago when you were sort of saying that work-life balance thing, there are some days where, you do have to get through an amount of work. You've got to get through that to-do list. And you might have had a heavy week, and you will be physically tired and fatigued. And if you did have that hour to go and get some exercise, sometimes on a non-e-bike, the thought of that first 15 to 20 minutes, whilst everything is warming up, your heart, your lungs, your legs, everything's warming up, it can actually put you off using that hour for going and riding your bike, because just physically the thought of going and riding is just too much. So you go, I haven't got time, I won't do that. Whereas with an e-bike, you go, well, no, I don't have to go through that cycle because I'm still traveling a fast-paced distance, even whilst I'm going through that warm-up phase because of the assistance of the motor. And then 15 minutes in, you're then warmed up, so you can start dropping down the modes and start working harder yourself as well. So as we keep saying, when you are short of time and sometimes short of inclination to actually physically go out, an e-bike does get you over that thought. Now, I've got a bit of a topic. So going back to comments, we did this last week's podcast of comments on the previous week's podcast. Yes. And I then went through and reviewed the comments on last week's podcast, which was your first ride video on the bike, where you did an excellent walkthrough of the bike, and you did your first ride, which blew you away. And one of I think the biggest comments that people have put is, Ped, why haven't you got a power meter? Why isn't there a power meter on a 13-gram bike? Power meters will change your life and all of that sort of stuff. And I just thought, if you don't mind, Peter, that it might just be good to cover off, all about power meters, what they do, what they're for, when you should have one, when you shouldn't have one, and all of that sort of fodder. Is that all right?
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I think we've covered it in a podcast in the past before, but no, definitely, I kind of forgot we were gonna do that, because there were quite a few, and so I'm going to ask some questions, and you can kind of drop me in terms of, if I wanted to put a power meter on that bike, there are a number of options, right, in terms of how they work, be that a pedal or a specific crank. So what are my options, and what kind of money am I looking
So
at?
I think that is the last question.
Okay, all right. You go first. You go. I tell you what, I'll just
listen
to
it's
what
fine.
You're going to say.
So the first question, which was directed on a very, very specific comment, was, at 13,000 quid, I can't believe there isn't a power meter fitted. Right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that, yes, you are correct in your comment that a lot of bikes now, even at the 5,000 to 7,000 quid, are coming with power meters fitted on the bikes now. It's starting to become a thing. Okay. But always remember that power meters are optional. And just because one manufacturer decides to fit a power meter as standard doesn't mean that everybody does or feels a need to or has the budget to be able to do it. So bear in mind that it's a 13,000 quid bike, but it's got 13,000 quid's worth of equipment fitted to it. A 5,000 quid bike that has a power meter fitted to it is a £4,500 bike with a power meter, right? So 500 quid of that budget, that 5,000 quid budget, was for the power meter. So it is a 4.5 grand bike with a 500 quid power meter. This is a 13 grand bike, and it would be a £13,500 bike if it had a power meter fitted to it. So you don't buy a 458 specialist speciale and it has full track data logging, right? It's an option.
No.
So always remember that is all a power meter is it's a data logger. The end. It's not helping you ride. It's not doing anything. It's just logging data and giving you information. But always remember that a power meter, the numbers that are coming from a power meter, are only relevant if you are training on power. So fitting a power meter to Peter's bike and Peter just getting power numbers is utterly pointless. It's like when you get on into your
Yeah.
BMW and it's got all of the sort of power and torque figures that you can bring up on the display, and you put your foot down, it says, oh, I'm using this amount of torque at the moment, I'm using this amount of power at the moment. Right, what information is that giving you other than look at me, right? So
Mm.
you only should fit a power meter, in my humble opinion, if you are training on power and you understand your base numbers. You get your base numbers
Yeah.
by doing some kind of FTP test, which is your functional threshold performance. And that is giving you your base numbers. So what your FTP is what you're then training from. And as you start doing more training through a specific, say, Turbo Trainer app like Zwift or Trainer Road or Sufferfest, any of those systems are really, really good. You can then start working on these power numbers. And the great thing about power numbers is that the numbers are the numbers. They're really, really great data to work from. And
Mm.
fundamentally, you can then translate those numbers that you are training to out onto the road. But without those base
Yeah.
numbers, your power meter numbers on your bike on the road that's coming up onto your Garmin head unit, if you don't know what base numbers you're working from, they're kind of irrelevant. So when I did the Marmot, I spent 7 months on a Trainer Road training plan, upping my FTP as I was training, which gave me my ultimate FTP. I then used those numbers and programmed my Garmin to make sure that I was riding between 75 and 85% of my FTP for the entire ride, that ensured that I was in the correct gear, that I wouldn't be then going into the red. Therefore, the 10 hours and 34 minutes that I was riding the Marmot for, I finished that ride pretty much as quickly as I could have done and enjoyed every single kilometre of that 174 kilometres. I never, ever got into the red. And that is where the power numbers were absolutely relevant. If I hadn't done the training
Yeah.
on power and understood what those numbers meant, it would have been fascinating, but totally irrelevant.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I remember us talking about this in the past, and one of the things you said which stuck with me was you almost got so obsessed with the numbers that you forgot to
correct,
enjoy riding your bike.
correct. That is also a truism as well. So, when I'm now riding my gravel bike, I don't even go out with a Garmin. Not only I don't have a power meter, but I don't even have a Garmin on there. I go out riding my gravel bike with my wife and just love being out in the countryside, turning my pedals and chatting to Rosie, because it got too serious. And look, I'm a professional cycle person, not a professional cyclist, but I'm a professional in the cycle industry. And one thing is for sure is that you've got to remember, this is a hobby, right? It's a hobby to everybody, because and
Yeah.
unless you are Geraint Thomas or you riding in the pro peloton and you are getting paid to ride your bike, this is a hobby. So always remember, enjoy the engineering, enjoy the physical challenge of going to do a bucket list event and all of that sort of stuff, and take that seriously, like I did with the Marmot. But please don't get bogged down. Do remember it's a hobby, and just enjoy being with people and friends and families and partners and all that sort of stuff, and enjoy riding your bike with people. Don't turn into one of
Yeah.
those data nerds that nobody wants to hang around with. So fundamentally, the reason why a power meter isn't fitted to Peter's bike is he doesn't train on power. So Peter doesn't have a smart turbo trainer to be able to go and use something like Trainer Road or Sufferfest or Zwift and actually get some true numbers to then be able to ride from out on the road. That is why a power meter isn't fitted to Peter's bike. The moment Peter goes, yeah, I now want to do some proper training, I want to get a smart trainer, let's get you set up, we will then put a power meter onto Peter's bike because then it's relevant. So hopefully that helps why there isn't a power meter and why there won't be a power meter until Peter starts training on power. I think...
Yeah. And I didn't, when we were speccing the bike, I didn't say I want a power meter. It wasn't, it's not in my, there's the gadget head inside of me goes, it's quite cool to say you've got one, but like you say, I don't use one. I would be probably embarrassed to see how little power I was actually putting through the pedals anyway. So you never know.
That's right.
In the future, maybe.
So I think hopefully that's covered why you have a power meter and why there isn't a power meter. So I think now we should come on to Peter's question that you asked first of all. You can ask your question again.
So, Paul, if I wanted to fit a power meter to my bike, what kind of options have I got? And
that's a great question, Peter, and I'd be delighted to answer. So, when it comes to power meters in general, you've got crank-based power meters and you've got pedal-based power meters. Your crank-based power meters tend to be, and there'll be manufacturers and what have you all sort of deny and all that sort of stuff. But I think the crank-based power meters, they tend to be slightly more accurate. Although, having said that, I use a pedal-based power meter on my bike, and they have been more than accurate enough. So we're talking about margins of error that are beyond the technicality that most riders have. So don't.
Yeah, you're not reporting your numbers to Dave.
That's exactly correct.
Don't worry about it.
So, and as power meters are becoming more prevalent because more people are training on things like Trainer Road and Zwift and that sort of stuff, a lot of the group set manufacturers now are integrating the power meters in a lovely fashion. So SRAM, for example, have got a power meter system, even all the way down to their rival group sets that click into the actual crank itself, into the main axle of the through the bottom bracket. And it's just beautifully integrated and beautifully designed because SRAM own Quark, who are a power meter manufacturer. So the whole SRAM integration, I think they've been really clever over the last number of years. So SRAM own RockShox, and SRAM own Quark, and they own Truvative, and they own a number of specialist brands, and they've come together as this homologated group that are producing some amazing technology. I'm not going to talk to Peter about the flight attendant now on the new RockShox suspension system.
No.
Yes.
That's
so
coming.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yes, we'll do that.
I'm talking about my
so spoiler alert. But the great thing is that a lot of these electronic components are now being integrated within the mechanical components because of these groups being bought and merged together. So we're seeing a lot more integration now. So on a SRAM equipped bike, you usually have Quark power meters that can be integrated within the crank system. And that's a beautifully integrated system. And a lot of the Quark, they'll give you left and right data. So individual pedal data for the right and left pedals. Some are just single-sided, so they tend to use one side of the pedal, and then they'll just divide that by 2. So you'll almost get a blended average as opposed to an accurate advantage. And I'd actually say 9 times out of the 10, if if you're having to buy a dual-sided or single-sided is absolutely fine for 95% of people in terms of the accuracy that you are requiring. But if there is an option for a dual-sided, you've got the budget for it, or it comes as standard, there's no reason why not. So that's your dual-sided and single-sided and your crank-based systems. You then also have your pedal-based systems from a number of companies. We're a Garmin supplier, so it used to be the Vector 3. They've now moved on to the new Rally pedal, which for the first time you are able to spec with the Look ecosystem or the Shimano SPDSL ecosystem. So it used to be Look only, but now you can get a pedal that uses whichever ecosystem of cleat that you use, which is nice. And also they've got a nice little thing with Garmin that if you can buy a power meter, and then if you're wanting to use that power meter on a mountain bike, you can just buy the pedal body, because the most expensive part of a power meter is actually the axle, which has got all of the technology. It's got the strain gauges and that sort of stuff. So what you can do is you can buy the road pedal power meter, and then if you want to use it on your mountain bike, you can then take the pedal off, take the axle out, and put the axle into the Shimano SPD based pedal body and use it on your mountain bike. So they are, it's really good. They are looking to do a lot more sort of modular stuff because they know that people are wanting power for mountain and road, but the cost, it's expensive to do. So they are thinking of,
especially if you've got 6 bikes like me.
So yeah, there we go. It's a £6,000 bill. So you've got all of those options. Now you also have to consider compatibility. So, for example, on my Trek in Monda, I've got the same chain set, which is Campag Super Record 12-speed. So I've got the same chain set as what Peter has got on his Ultra XR4. Now, there is a power meter system from a company called Stages, and they make beautiful power meters that are bonded to, usually if you're buying the single-sided, they're bonded to the non-drive side crank arm. But you need to have a minimum clearance between the inside of the crank arm and the outside of the non-drive side chainstay. Otherwise, the power meter will catch on the frame. So on the Trek in Monda that I own, I was going to fit a Stages power meter that's bonded onto a Super Record crank arm because it's the most lovely looking integrated system, and that meant that I could then choose whatever pedal system I wanted to go for, but there wasn't the clearance to be able to put it on my frame, which is why I had to go for Garmin Vector 3s.
Okay.
Whereas on Peter's Ultra, there is clearance. So if Peter wanted to put a really beautifully integrated system using a Stages power meter, it's expensive because you basically have to buy a Super Record left-hand crank arm with titanium half shaft. So it's about 800 quid just because of the... Yes, that's right. With the power meter bonded onto the inside of that crank arm. It's a beautiful system. But the Ultra XR4 does have the clearance to be able to do that. So he'd be able to carry on using the Look carbon blade pedal and still get a power meter on the bike. So don't just automatically go, I like the look of that, I'm going to buy one of those. You've also got to check compatibility and clearance as well.
There's a surprise. It's never as easy as you think, is it? I mean, to be honest, I've only I have looked in the past, although what I find fascinating whenever I have a conversation with you is you learn so much anyway. I've looked in the past because I thought, it'd be quite cool to have a power meter. And then what I would have probably done is then learnt or worked out how to use it. And actually, it's the wrong way round. You need to work out how to use it. And if you're happy with that, because it's not, I made a comment in last week's video, I've fitted a cadence sensor to my bike because I ride
Yeah.
on cadence. I kind of know in my head what it feels like when I'm riding at my cadence, but it's nice to just look down. And for me, if I'm between 80 and 90 RPM, that's my everyday cadence, and sometimes I go a
Yeah.
little bit higher than that. So that's fine because
Yeah.
first of all, a cadence thing is like hardly anything. I can't remember what I paid for it now, 30 quid or something. It's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's easy.
Pennies,
It's
isn't
easy
it?
to work to, right? With power, it's a bit different. It's not like you said. It's not something you can look down and go, "Oh, I'm doing 200 watts," or "I'm at a certain percentage of my FTP." Because, like you said,
Yeah.
it takes quite a lot of get before you even get to that point. But if you're doing a
Yeah.
long,
Well, you've got to have the baseline.
yeah,
That's the key thing. With cadence, you're right. Most people, if you are between 80 and 90 RPM, most people can work within that rev range. There are some people who are a bit more diesel
yeah,
powered, which I imagine you would be, is more diesel powered, who could probably be sort of high 70s to mid 80s and be in a nice power band for you. Whereas Rosie, she's like a flat plane V8 Ferrari. Her power is up at high revs.
yeah,
So Rosie and I can be riding along together, and she could be 10 to 15 revs per minute faster than I am, but she's in her power
yeah,
band. But you're right. Largely, you can spend 30 quid, and if you ride within 80 to 90 RPM, for largely most people, that's a nice
my
little gauge to
FTP.
look down at. With a power meter, if you haven't got an accurate FTP of where you are at the moment, your numbers are pretty much
Yeah,
irrelevant.
yeah, and it was interesting. You said when you went, you did the Marmot and used it for that. Now I've done some really spiky long rides. Be that the Roubaix Challenge or stages of the Tour de France, and I haven't ridden it on power, but I wasn't riding
Mm.
it with a particular target time, or I just wanted to I just wanted to survive basically and get round. So
Hmm.
for me, I don't think for the way I approach those rides, power would have been irrelevant anyway, um, or not irrelevant, but it wasn't part of my training plan. What I like about when you talk about the Marmot is how you train for that, and it was a very structured, very typical Bowker approach. But I've never done
Yeah.
that before, and actually, there's an element to me that says I reckon I'd probably quite enjoy that. Now, I've never ridden to power at all.
Mm.
Next year, we're going to do some changes to the house, and I'm either going to get uh, a really good turbo trainer that I can connect to something like Zwift, or I'm going to buy something
Hmm.
like a Watt bike, and
Yeah.
then start to, well, the name's in the title, right? Watt bike, and then
Yeah.
start to train on power a little bit more. But on my road bike, I'm certainly not going to spend 800 quid for a new crank. Put it that way. But it's interesting
No, not if the numbers are irrelevant to you.
to me. No,
That's
uh,
that's
yeah,
that's the point.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
And the other thing as well, don't forget, I did the hard work and the hard training to go and enjoy the Marmot.
yeah,
So always remember, I also didn't go out to do a target time or to be competitive. I'm not a brilliant cyclist. I just enjoy riding a bike.
mm,
Um, and so I spent 7 months because it was costing me the best part of probably out of the family budget. Bearing in mind, Rosie wasn't there. I wasn't doing it with Rosie. This was a selfish single thing that I wanted to do personally. And I was going to leave Rosie for 4 to 5 days to go and do something with some blokey pals. And it was going to cost the family 12 to 1300 quid of our family budget for me to just go and do that one event.
mm,
It's a lot of money. So I wanted to make sure that when I got home and Rosie said, "Tell me all about it," I could say, "Do you know what, Rosie? It was the hardest thing I've ever done on a bike, but I enjoyed every single minute.
yeah,
This is what I did. This is where I went. This is what I saw. This was a relationship that I built with my friend Steve
yeah,
as we did it, and for Rosie, that was 12, 1300 quid well spent." if I hadn't have put the effort into the training and then ridden actually quite seriously on the numbers, and I came back and went, oh, sorry, love, within an hour I was puking into a wheelie bin on the side because I went off too hard and I didn't actually finish, right? Then Rosie would be like, well, okay, so that's 1,300 quid up the spout then, and you didn't even have a good time. So that's why I put the effort in.
Yeah, no, so there we go. So hopefully that answers the question of why I haven't got a power meter. Because I don't want to puke in wheelies. So we are at the end of our allotted time, my friend. How quickly does that hour go?
I know.
I'm glad you remember that bit at the end. I knew in my back of my head I was thinking there's something we're going to talk about. Oh yeah, it's the power meter thing. But everything else on the bike, I don't think there's anything else missing other than a power meter. It's got everything else, people. It's amazing.
And a powerful engine.
Well, there is the squishy organic thing on the top isn't probably as powerful as it could be. So next week, if you're going to tune in Cycle Sunday on the Petrol Ped YouTube channel at 6, it's all about gravel bikes. It's a bit of a trip to the Cotswolds with a mate of mine, Dino. Tune into that one to see me flying a drone and riding my bike at the same time. Oh yeah. A new YouTuber skill. It's something I can't do in a car because it's highly illegal, but when you're riding a bike across a field, you can apparently, I found out how, you can fly a drone and ride your bike at the same time. It's worth tuning into just see me do that. But yeah, putting a gravel bike to the test. And actually, the interesting thing about next week is doing a compare and contrast between a gravel bike and a CX bike, a cyclocross bike.
Yes.
Because that we've talked about that in the gravel bike videos before, but it was quite interesting to have two side by side and kind of have a chat about them. But you need to tune into that one. But hopefully, guys, you've enjoyed this. Remember, as we said earlier on, make sure you kind of give us a rating and subscribe and share and all that kind of good stuff to increase the number of listeners and viewers we've got to the podcast. But for now, I think that's probably the time where I say, I've been Pete Reeves.
I've been Paul Bowker.
Take care, guys. Right safe,
everyone.